Dear friends, there was last week yet again deterioration in the security situation in eastern Ukraine. Last week, the OBSЄ Special Monitoring Mission recorded almost 6,500 ceasefire violations, an almost 70% increase on the previous week. The increase in the number of recorded uses of proscribed weapons was even more pronounced. 317 last week compared to 6 the week before. These numbers, however, do not tell us the full story of what has been happening in eastern Ukraine. Whether we in the OBSЄ Special Monitoring Mission report 500 or 5,000 ceasefire violations, the basic reality remains the same. The conflict continues. For most of us, there has now been over 3 years of news of conflict. Most of us in the meantime have gotten on with our daily lives. In eastern Ukraine, however, the past 3.5 years have been more than just a daily cycle of news and late-night TV chat shows. In the past 3.5 years have instead been a cycle of violence, part of ordinary people's daily life. Last week, even in a period of relative calm, the OBSЄ Special Monitoring Mission reported on a man in Makivka injured by shrapnel with wounds to his left shoulder and right leg and to his back of his neck. He had been working as a taxi driver when a mortar round exploded close to him. An everyday occurrence in the lives of people in eastern Ukraine. Very far from reality for most of us. The OBSЄ Special Monitoring Mission last week also observed ordinary people in eastern Ukraine without electricity, gas or running water. And everywhere people reduced to levels of desperation and dependency not seen elsewhere in Europe for decades. Dear friends, the OBSЄ Special Monitoring Mission last week also observed 46 weapons in violation of agreed withdrawal lines. We also observed mines in numerous locations, including around Shastia. Also last week, the OBSЄ SMM saw no progress towards the disengagement of forces and formations. Last week we also noted recent extensive trenching in many areas along the contact line, suggesting readiness for more violence. It seems the sides are preparing for more violence rather than ending it. Dear friends, there is at this moment a strange disconnect. On the one hand, there is universal concern for the plight of the people of eastern Ukraine. Everyone is committed to ending the conflict that causes all this human tragedy. On the other hand, all the indications observed every day and night by the OBSЄ Special Monitoring Mission suggest that very little is being done to stop this conflict. So long as disengagement remains stalled, so long as proscribed weapons remain in place, so long as mines are in the ground, and so long as preparation for more violence continues, violence will continue. The number of deaths and injuries will mount. People in eastern Ukraine will remain cold, impoverished, and dependent. This is a disconnect between declared positions and agreements and reality that people in positions of power need to urgently address. Dear friends, there is another more fundamental disconnect. perhaps feeding in the one faced by people in position of powers, one that all of us need to address. It is far too easy to dismiss the suffering in eastern Ukraine. For most of us far removed from the conflict, to paraphrase a song that has much relevance this week, the violence is in our heads. It is in some distant place, some place far away, emotionally and politically. The sides indeed need to implement existing agreements. They must adhere fully to provisions governing withdrawal of weapons, disengagement of forces and formations, and demining. But fundamentally, all of us must realize that Donbas is not a place apart. It is not only in our heads. It is real, with real people suffering day in, day out. Taxi drivers, grandmothers, children, all dying and being maimed in real streets, like the ones outside here, in real apartment blocks, like the one you live in fields, like the ones in which you grow your crops. They are not just dying in our heads. Sometimes they are dying in kindergartens and schools, like the ones you send your children to. Last year, the OBSЄ Special Monitoring Mission confirmed the death or injury of over 40 children, many of them killed or maimed for life from shrapnel as they played or went to school. Civilian casualties are more than statistics. They are parents, grandparents, and children. They are coal miners, teachers, and sometimes, as we saw in Makivka last week, taxi drivers. All of them enduring a conflict in its 4th year, and judging by what the SMM saw last week, a conflict with no end in sight, or at least not in sight of people in positions of power. This tragedy, this continuing violence, is in our heads, but it's also in the daily lives of millions of people in this country, millions of Ukrainian citizens. Thank you.